Hello, friends, and welcome to today's Waking Up the Tools conversation. Um, we are live in LinkedIn right now, so if you're here with us, hello, it's great to see you. And I am joined by my co host for this series and the co creator of the tools, Coach Andrew Moss. It's great to see you, Andrew.
Thank you, Kay. Nice to see you.
I'm going to hold up my mug because it's going to give a clue. So what we've basically been doing is, I guess for a recap, there are 7 tools that I wrote about in my book, which is called Waking Up, which is about the journey that I had, growing in to become the person who could solo hike across northern England, and then doing it, and then all of the interesting fun that happened after. Andrew is my friend and colleague, was my coach for all of that. And the memoir is really a sharing of what it took to really be able to do that in terms of a lot of different ways of growing, much more than physical. And these tools are mindset tools, and so we've been talking about one a month on this day, the second Thursday, of the month. And the one that I chose today, because I get to choose the tools that we talk about, and I'm going to hold up my mug to give you all a clue. So on one side of my mug it says nope. Boy, to me that looks totally backwards, but anyway, hopefully it doesn't to the viewers. And on the other side it says yup. And I wonder, I even wonder, Andrew, if you have an idea of which is the tool we're going to talk about today from that.
I have no clue.
All right, well then I will read, and we'll see how this comes into the conversation. I will read the portion of the book that is about that. Tool 6. Let's give the mic drop here to Coach Andrew. A. The law of the universe is that you receive back that which you put your focus and attention on. So be very careful what you choose to put your focus and attention on. Boom! When I am putting out anxiety or fatigue or fear, the world feels anxious or tiring or just plain scary. When I put out joy and kindness and openness and love, those are returned to me. One law, so lovely. So today we're talking about the law of the universe.
One of the laws of the universe, perhaps. Yes.
Yeah. How do you remember our conversations about the law of the universe when we were coaching, when we were doing this work together as I was training?
I don't remember the specific instance when it first came up. I certainly remember that I know it has come up several times. But, I do remember that I think there was an impetus around my sense of what was going on for you was that you were getting back things consistent with what you were putting out. And my curiosity as a coach was, how do we change that? How do we have you receiving the things that are going to support what you were trying to do? And how do we become the source of that as opposed to just hoping that things change? How do we actually create that change from within ourselves so that what is reciprocated back is consistent with what we need and what we want? So, yeah, I think there was probably several instances when that came up. I could definitely remember some while you were hiking, when the energy of how you treated your body, how you treated some of the pains and discomforts that were coming with doing what you were doing were being held, like in terms of an energy in you. And I remember even before the trek, and maybe this is actually related to it a little bit, is you had some tendon troubles in the past and were quite worried about those. And so there's a lot of worry energy about the tendons that was sort of manifesting into discomfort in some of your training hikes. And I remember having a conversation with you around that as well.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I mean, I'm holding up my coffee mug and I'm seeing on both arms today I'm wearing braces because the tendon thing is still ongoing for me, right? Like I still have tendon challenges. I've gained a lot in my arms. So in the summer of 2014, I had basically no use of my hands, like at all. Like imagine not being able to twirl spaghetti or pour coffee or like wash your hair. I mean, it was really, really interesting. And I grew to the point where now I have about 50% use of my hands on a good day. And it comes into this conversation because like I'm absolutely okay with what's happening with my hands right now. Like I am not focusing on the fear of what the future might be because I have to wear these braces today because I've got sore hands. Like, and I think it's just interesting how what you focus on grows, which is like the whole point here, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you fill us all in on what was the first moment? I don't know if I think in the book it references them. Obviously, that conversation had some context to it. But is that the first recollection you have of me presenting that? Because I do remember it was a bit of a jolting thing when I shared it with you.
Yeah. So as what was happening in my life was I was getting closer and closer to going to England. Like I had the plane tickets, I had places booked all across. I was actively training. And I started to notice, the first thing I started to notice was that getting ready to go out for a hike to go train felt a lot like when I was a new parent and there was everything that you had to do to get the diaper bag ready to go when you were taking your child out for the first time, like, or in those first weeks. And it just, there was just a lot of suffering and worry because I didn't know if I was packing the right things, or I didn't, like, there were all these feelings about was I doing it right or not and what would happen. And then I started to notice that as I focused on those things more, although I wouldn't have said it that way, but I started to notice that like even despite the techniques that I use to feel better, to make my tendons feel better, so massage, stretching, strengthening, Epsom salt baths, like those sorts of things, they weren't as effective. Like, and what I would be basically doing is I'd be stretching or massaging and I'd be like, oh no, like it's all gonna fall apart. Like this is not, how can this possibly go right? And I think what you did so well and so gently was to basically say, some version of like, these all appear to be fears that you have about the future. And you're bringing a lot of attention to them. And I remember at one point, and this is in the book, this line of yours is in the book, you said something like, you'll be so much happier just focusing on what's happening around you, or just focusing on the birds or whatever, instead of your own feelings. And I was like, oh yes, that's so true. And then there were other instances of it because there were like trying to extricate myself from being too much of a mom for my young adult sons, or trying to advocate for myself in terms of resources and time to go. Like all of those things I spent so much time worrying about that I wasn't focusing on the good things about, that I was going to be able to go, or that like whatever. And what I noticed was that when I focused on basically the law of the universe, right? What I focus on grows. So when I did successfully get out on the path and start enjoying hearing the birds, and I would hear these invitations come out, oh, what about this? What about this? And I'd be like, yeah, no, just, we're going to go back to the birds. And there was some active choosing there, I think, or some active focusing my attention where I wished it to be. And those were really the first openings of that. You know what I mean? And yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that's great. I mean, for the audience, that's a great awareness that, when we find ourselves caught up in thoughts, giving attention to things that we don't want, there's always an invitation to pay attention to something different, like that's going on in the moment, in the present moment, in the environment you're in. Might be the sound of a air conditioning fan, or it could be, the sound of the birds, or it could be just, how your body's feeling. It gives your mind a chance to shift attention to something that's more peaceful and more sort of present to where you're at right now, and to a feeling that you want. So yeah, I think it's important. Like, you went through so many situations that, naturally your body was sending signals to your mind that were not necessarily positive things that you wanted to continue to give attention to. And you got better and better and better through the whole training and then the hike at noticing when that was happening and not getting trapped into those thoughts and giving attention to them for too long. You would catch yourself and then, go back to the birds or go to the cows or go to the, just taking the next step, or being playful in how fast you went. And then, there were so many things that we did that were really just attention diversions from the discomfort of, several hundred miles of hiking over, 2 weeks, right? So
3 weeks.
3 weeks, yeah. So, I think for everybody that's an opportunity we always have. If you're caught up in either an emotional feeling or a thinking pattern that's not really where you want to be, is find an alternative thing to give yourself attention, give your attention to. And it's a great way to sort of break some of those patterns.
So I want to take a quick moment for a check-in on. So I know our friend Jeff Lamb is sort of moderating this call. Jeff is the co-founder and COO of Pathfinders for Good, which is the organization that is hosting us right now. And so I really want to acknowledge that and give a lot of gratitude. And I was wondering, Jeff, if you're listening, which I think you are listening because you are, with the folks in LinkedIn. So I'm not seeing LinkedIn at all. But Jeff, what I was curious about was if you are, and if folks have questions. So if you are live with us and you've got questions, Jeff, can you grab those questions and message them to me, because I do have my phone right here, and or comments. That way I can keep up with those. And we can bring them if anybody's got curiosities about this, conversation.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it would be great to see how we can relate our experience with other people's lives. I also want to just mention that I think Pathfinders really, if you think about what we're up to, we're amplifying good stories that are happening all around us all the time. Everyday people doing good stuff to try to make the future a better place to be a part of. It's actually very much founded on this actual universal law, because I think Jeff and I, when we met, we realized we shared a desire, we shared a concern about the state of the future that we were seeing around us, and we came at it from different places. But when we talked it through, it was obvious that we had very common values about the kind of world we'd like to leave, our kids and future generations and to live in right now ourselves. And then, you can get angry about that. And there's lots of angry activists out there. And you can also feel very overwhelmed by it. And you could actually choose something that you're passionate about and do something about it. And we just decided that Pathfinders could be a place to put our attention and invite other people's attention to the for good work that was going on, instead of all the other news and channels that you have coming at you all the time that are telling you the other side of the story. Mm-hmm. And really, Pathfinders we really hope it can become a source of information and inspiration and attention for people who want to feel like there is hope and there is good in the world and there is an opportunity to make the world a better place. And, seeing the people who are doing that is a great place to put your attention to, because it gives you permission to maybe I have some skills that I could apply to doing good in the world as well. Mm-hmm. And it's an invitation to do so. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. and just to follow up on that, having been in Pathfinder's Circle now for probably about, I guess, probably 6 months, even before it was called Pathfinder Circle. I really have felt exactly what you're speaking to, which is amidst all of the scary things and chaos and the worries and the that come at us from so many channels, to be a Pathfinder and to have a place to go where I could connect with other folks in the world and other places in the world, hear what their challenges are and hear what they are doing. For example, we have a couple of mutual friends that come up, and one I think may even be in LinkedIn Live right now, which is Olivia. Hello, Olivia, if you're there. Olivia is our fellow Pathfinder who was born and raised, lives in Uganda, and is doing incredible work in terms of the education system in Uganda. She's a college professor there, or a university professor. She has a real passion for like lifelong learning. We were just talking about this morning. Like we get to hear and know people who are doing really amazing things in the world, and feel like what an amazing idea to bring your focus to, right? And then it's had the effect for me of, first of all, not feeling alone. Like I didn't feel sort of stuck in a town. I live in a town that has literally been, called in the media the deep south of the North. I mean, that is a pretty scary thing that might grab your attention if you allowed it to, right? And instead to be able to say, well, first of all, there are good people here because I love where I live, and I love that, I know lots and lots of wonderful people right here who do not fit that stereotype. And secondly, to be able to connect with people doing good all over the world and feel like you are also doing, like it's almost like an amplified, like literally amplified feeling of goodness and of connection and engagement. And so for anybody out there who is, or anyone listening or watching who feels like you wish you could be doing more, or you wish that you are doing something that you'd like, that you wish more people could know about or hear about, like pathfinders.social, baby. Like come and share your story, because we need you if you haven't yet. So Andrew, it's a question that I had for you about the law of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
It is such a woo-woo concept, it feels like to me, right? Like the law of the universe. And I've been thinking about this lately because we've been talking a little bit about like even in Pathfinders, we've been talking about your sort of like sports coaching background. Like you have a really long history as a coach. And I guess what I'm curious about is like, how has it been to sort of, were you always a little bit woo-woo, or is that something that's relatively new? Like, do you even see yourself that way? Like, I'm curious about your methodology and coaching and how this applies there.
Yeah, I don't see myself as woo-woo. I don't, but I can only speak for, myself. So how others might see me, I have no idea. I definitely don't think that some of the language is language that would have been used in my sports coaching days, and I think I would have got a lot of sideways looks of some of the language. But what's interesting, even as you were setting that question up, I was thinking, like it wasn't. I had a conversation with one of my daughters about her sports career, and there was a time when she would just dive in for her swimming races and swim with her attention on like winning the race, right? Like that was all that mattered to her. And it was incredible sometimes to watch her just like transform into this other being that you'd never seen swim like that before. Wow. And then as she's gotten older, she's, she often will come back from her performances focused on like how much it hurt, right? Like the physical pain of the performance. And her performance results have been changed as well. And I just think it's a fascinating thing because her attention shifted from, the fun of competing against these other people who were, alongside for the race, to internal, how am I feeling right now? And that has changed her capacity to get performance out of the same body. Her brain is focused on a different thing, and it's her body is responding to that. And I think, in sports, I don't see it as woo-woo. I actually see this law of the universe not as a woo-woo thing at all. I think it's just a very practical and pragmatic thing to just understand that what we get back in our day-to-day life is very, very connected to what we're putting out. And both from an energy point of view, from a language point of view, from a how we treat people point of view, from the way we see the world. Like, if you see everybody as dangerous, you're going to find yourself feeling under threat and in a dangerous situation almost all the time, right? If you see that generally people are pretty good, then you can go into situations with a belief that I'm reasonably safe in this situation. It doesn't mean I'm ignorant to being safe for myself, but that this is a safe environment. These are good human beings around me. I can manage this. And that's all happened up here. It's like how you choose to think about it, right? And so I don't, we can call it woo-woo if that's the label, but what it really fundamentally is, which, to be honest, I think so much of what people call woo-woo, or what people call, these sort of like existential ideas or questions, or they've been around thousands of years, many of these, right? Like cultures way, way, way back had some of these initial ideas. And the fact that they've stood the test of time and people still find a connection to some of these ideas and find them useful, to me, that's what makes it a law of the universe. It's like there's a universal truth to it that people can see when they allow themselves to slow down and just consider the truth in the words. And they're not my words. When you said co-create, I didn't co-create this. You didn't co-create this. We just figured out how to apply an understanding of how the universe works to a context that you were in. And I was able to do that because I had a nice view of what you were going through that was different than the view you were having through your own experience. And I thought this could be a helpful tool and a helpful understanding to have to support you. But I think these are fundamental understandings of how we as humans experience life. And I actually think it's not doing any service to call these things woo-woo, because what they fundamentally are things that I wish there was a handbook that we were all given when we were, super young, that said, just so you know, the things that you put your attention on are going to basically play out right back to you in the way that, and the energy and the way that you're looking at them, and the way that you're exuding energy towards them. And that I do some work. I've done some work in the past in Chicago with some youth groups there. That's one of the fundamental things we're teaching the kids in elementary school is like, they even have a game where they have different colored sunglasses that they get to wear, right? And they identify each set of sunglasses by the color to a different emotion. So if you're putting like kind sunglasses on and you're looking at your classmates, like what do you feel? Like, how do you feel about your classmates? And then you put on the red ones that are your angry glasses, and you feel a different thing. And it's like, if we can teach that to kids when they're 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, like imagine their experience of life after that. And that's just giving them a universal law in a language with a game that will resonate for them. So I don't know that I've definitely been on a self work journey for a lot of my life of trying to understand myself and the human experience. And I've been curious about this for a long time. But I think the language to help other people with it has come only as a result of finding the language that worked with me, and then helping, and then me seeing the benefits of that, and then me finding language to help other people as they go through their life.
I mean, there's so much that's just resonating. There is, we have both, I think, read writing by coach and wonderful author Steve Chandler. And one of the things that he talks about is, he says, this is the most practical thing I can say. If you do this very practical thing, your life will change. And what he talks about is, he's like, imagine that you have a beam of light that comes out of your heart. And wherever you direct that's what's going to happen. Like that's where you're focusing your energy. That's what's going to happen. And I coming back to the idea of, because I think you just highlighted this so well, is with other people that you've worked with, perhaps this has come up in different ways. Mm-hmm. But I think if I think back to my experience, like a lot of the training for England was to let go of these sort of almost very serious, very logical, sort of gridded, binding thoughts that I had. Because that was what I was like, well, I didn't think of myself as a creative person or someone who, could be open to like magical happenings or whatever. Because I felt like that was somehow wrong. I think the conditioning that I had taken in, that's just sort of come to me through my life is like, well, there's only one way to be, and it is logical and straight and linear. And like I'm so not that. And you found a way to make it okay for me to do this very practical, give myself permission to do this very practical thing of focusing on like, what I wish to see or bring about by giving it a name that was the opposite of all of that, and instead was this wonderful opening to the universe. Like I could look up at the stars and I could see that's what the universe is. Wow, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I just want to add one little thing, because I think there still is, I think, a little bit of this sort of separation in how people look at some of the work that's behind these concepts, right? Like some of this, which gets labeled as sort of spiritual, woo-woo, whatever you want to call it, right? But what's interesting is that more and more people are actually coming to that space from a more scientific background, right? When the sort of quantum physics world that has been evolving over the last decades has started to understand that there's actually quantum physics actually explains something that makes the whole ideas around spiritualism and around the kinds of things we're talking about, energy being a circular thing. It makes it all actually very pragmatic and very sort of practical from a scientific perspective as a language to explain something that people realized thousands of years ago was going on, and they just created words around it without knowing the science that was going on behind it. And so I think people are seeing that what people have been saying through what was sort of put into a corner as this woo-woo spiritual work was really just language to explain what science is starting to understand about what we think is going on around us, truly going on around us. And it's not this sort of one-directional thing that, we may have led ourselves to believe it was, that there is definitely layers of energy and of reality going on that we do have some influence over in terms of how we show up ourselves.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. You're making me remember I was in a doctor's office one time, and I was looking through a book that was for kids. It was sort of like a chapter book, so maybe, 10, 12-year-old kids. It was a book about like our natural world. And there was a whole chapter which I was very excited about to read about on the Northern Lights. And the first thing it said was, people used to think the Northern Lights were magical. But now we know that they're not. Well, now we know the science behind it, therefore they're not magical. And I think, this is an opinion. I think it's really hard for us to just take something on the feelings of it, or to take some things on without that sort of grounding in science. And it's lovely that there can be both. You know what I mean? Like I remember reading that and thinking like, well, why can't we know the science and also have it be magical?
Yeah, well, it's interesting too, though, that like there's, I have some good friends in the coaching business who are, determined to get to the neuroscience of everything, right? Mm-hmm. I sometimes will say to them, my experience is if it works for me and it works consistently and I can see the benefit of it, like that's a pretty good science experiment for me. Like I'll take that as proof that this is a helpful thing. And, I never tell a coaching client what to do, but I'll invite them to try something that corresponds to what my little self-science experiment has learned has been helpful. And you're right, like sometimes the context is very different, the language will even be different in how I'll present it to them, but the fundamental universal law behind it is the same, right? Mm-hmm. And all that really matters is, does this provide a consistent tool to help somebody respond to the events that life is putting in front of them or that they're creating through their own experience of life? Does it help make life a little bit better for them? And if it does, I'm satisfied with that. Like I actually, and this is a personal thing. I think the neuroscience is beautiful and it's interesting, but the need for proof of something in order to feel the benefits of it, to me, is an unnecessary extra step. I think if you can find things that help you and are consistently helpful, like why not just accept that that's sort of an upgrade to your own operating system and just adopt it and go with it. And maybe you're going to find something that you can also share with other people that will be helpful for them. Mm-hmm. I think this is one of the things, like the self-help world and all the books and all that, they're so prescriptive and but what they fundamentally are is somebody trying to convey something that they learned was helpful for themselves and trying to share it with other people, right? And it doesn't always land, right? You can go through books and books on time management and, grief management and, emotional intelligence. And some of them will just read like another language to you, and then some of them will just land. And we had a good friend of ours this week mention the Untethered Soul book, mm-hmm. Which has been really a foundational book for I think both of us in different ways. And she said something like, these are not new ideas. Like these are ideas that have been around for a long time, but there's a language or an invitation to understand them that was. You just kept finding yourself, like it's one of those books that could be all highlighter by the end because there's just enough truths in it where you're nodding as you go through it. You're going like, yeah, that's been my experience of life. I've just never had somebody explain it to me this way. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm always, personally, that's always what I'm searching for, is just like this chance to understand things in a simple way. And apply them on myself in a consistent way. And then if I see the benefits of that, it becomes another tool to share when the time is right with a client.
Thank you for that. Like, so enlightening. I feel that in a physical sense too. It's like, yeah. So energizing, And it does make me curious. You said this before, that maybe the language was different for you when you were learning this, but you did find something that worked for you, and then you could bring it into your work. And I guess I was curious if you might share something about the beginning of this for you. Like, do you remember a time before you knew the law of the universe, except maybe it wasn't called the law of the universe? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think I might have told the story on one of these LinkedIn lives before, but the audience may be a bit different, so that's cool. I actually talked to somebody at the gym yesterday about this. She was putting me through some paces on some exercises yesterday, and said, like, you have no like most of my clients, like when they're done one of these like supersets of these like high intensity sessions, like they're loud and they're panting and like there's a lot of like stuff coming out of them, right? And she's like I can't even tell if you're like bothered by, but I feel like I haven't given you enough to do because I can't tell. She goes like, yeah, like how do you like is that where does that come from? And I said, yeah, well, that was not always me. Like that, the me before was somebody who was quite reactive to anything that I didn't like the feeling of, and to situations and people or decisions or what have you. And I just, reached a point in my adulthood that I decided I didn't really like being that person anymore. I didn't like what it felt like to be in that experience every day, and to constantly feel like I was kind of under threat by how other people were actually behaving. And so I didn't really know what to do about that. I just remember very clearly deciding that that was not the way I wished to continue to be. And then it just happened that was also a time when I lived near the lake. I was able to go in the mornings for some long walks, and when I started, I would just go for a couple-hour walk with my headphones on, and I would listen to some podcasts. And somehow I landed. This is quite a long time ago, so these were early podcast days. There was a podcast called "The One You Feed," I think is what it was called. And it was about this fable about the two wolves, about a young boy asking his grandfather. There's a grandfather telling a story about these two wolves, and one being a positive, hopeful wolf, and one being sort of the danger. And I think I'm butchering the story, but one definitely more of a positive, and one definitely more of a negative. And the young boy asked the grandfather, like, which one wins? And it's like, it's the one you feed. So there's the universal law. The first time I heard it was actually through that story, on repeat every day, because they would always use that story as the next, whoever the guest of the episode was, they would present that story and ask the guest to respond to what they took from that. And what I gradually learned was, okay, so what they're fundamentally saying is, what I give my attention to is what is the version that's going to win. Mm-hmm. Right? And so the version that was winning before was the version that I was giving attention to, which was this negative, reactive, under threat person. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to give attention to somebody that was more hopeful and was more actually like I used to be when I was younger. More hopeful, more free going, just enjoying life. And so through those walks, I think I gradually adopted that, and just started to recognize through the walks. And it was funny because I remember there was a day where I started walking and I was like, I actually am tired of having this noise in my ear. I get the story now. And then I started to notice from that day forward some of the chatter in my own mind because I wasn't getting it through the headphones. And that gave me the opportunity to practice what I had learned from the podcast, right? To notice what voice was showing up and notice which one I wanted to give attention to. And then that just became an ingrained ability. And I later learned through those walks that I could also be playful with the times when the big bad wolf voice showed up. I could be like, oh, I see you there. Like, isn't that interesting that you've shown up even though we've put you to bed? Like, you're still trying to sneak back in. But I was not, like, I didn't get caught up in it. I just found that I could notice it and then continue on with my walk and enjoy it. So yeah, that phase of my life of just kind of making a very intentional decision to choose to be a different way, and then coming upon some learning that presented a universal law that through a story was the start of it all, and then learning to practice it, and then learning to accept it as a new way of being. And I didn't need anybody else to know. Nobody knew that this was going on. I just did this and noticed the benefits and chose to keep doing it and enjoy the benefits of that, and then adopt it as my new operating system.
It's like you took yourself on your own sort of client journey.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
You know what comes up too? It's making me think of the fixed mindset, growth mindset, which comes up a lot in education. And the example that I have in my head is one of the things that I employ to keep my body healthy is a foam roller. So I have this big, thick foam roller, right? Mm-hmm. And we've got some stuff going on in our lives right now that is definitely I feel it in my tendons. I feel it in my body. And so I've been having some knee pain, right? And a former me would have lost her mind about that and felt super disempowered and because I just didn't know how to think about it yet. I didn't know this law of the universe what to focus on. And I've been I've been using this foam roller specifically on my outer thigh. It has a better name than that, but I'm not remembering what it is. Anyway, and what'll happen is I'll be rolling with most of my weight above that point, right? And so now I'll get to the point where it's really tense, and I'll just go like it hurts. You get to that, and I'm just like but it's not a like agony It's this is where I really need to like do this, bring my attention to making this part of my leg feel better. Yes. And that's what's helped. And I think the growth mindset a fixed mindset is when you conclude there's nothing that can be done about this. I'm just going to live with this now, right? Like that's why I needed a wheelchair for so long, because that was the conclusion that my world was giving me, and I accepted it. And to be able to instead to be curious about like, well, all right, I've got this pain, like, is there anything I can do about it? And then to have that be, because then a challenge becomes fun for me anyway. It becomes something to be curious about, to try things, to experiment, to see what worked and what didn't. Like, it's very flexible and fun, and yeah. So that's kind of an experience that, in those, it's a sort of another way of looking at it, is fixed and growth mindset. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, I'm finding these days I'm really railing against a lot of these labels, as you've been experiencing that.
Yeah, I love it
with me because I just find like they describe something, and that to me is just like a state of being. And in fact, like even the idea like mindset, the idea is like mindset to me changes. Like if we think about our own life experience, our mindset towards things isn't really always the same. Like it often changes. Even if you would consider yourself under this label of a fixed mindset, we have the ability to see things differently in different contexts, often based on our lived experience of whether we're comfortable with something or something's new, something feels threatening or something feels easy. Like we can have a different mindset. So I think mindset is a variable that, depending on what your life experience is, you either realize that there's all kinds of variables of what our mindset can be, and we can change it in a moment, because we've had the experience that we can actually do that. Or you feel like it's something that takes quite a bit of effort to get it to nudge to a different place. Mm. But, I worry about anything that labels people into like, two
I'm this, I'm that.
Two ways of being, yeah. Because I think everybody has had an experience of being able to change their mindset about something presented with some new facts. Like you hear about people who give up smoking only when they find out they have lung cancer, right? Well, the mindset, the mind was able to change its mind towards whether smoking was a good thing to keep doing or not in a moment based on being presented with some new information. Now, does that mean that person was a fixed mindset all the way and then all of a sudden became a more flexible mindset? I don't know. But it tells me that people have the ability to change their mindset at any time. It's just the information, the understanding, the leverage, whatever it is that creates the opportunity to change how we look at things. And there's Wayne Dwyer, I think, said, when we change the way we look at things, the things that we look at change, which is, again, just different language for the same thing we've been talking about on this whole episode, right? Is like when we look at things in a certain way, they get reflected back to us in a certain way. And if we change how we look at them, then they look different to us. And, I remember some of our text exchanges during the walk, especially around self-care with your feet and the way your body was feeling, at the end of a day, is like, how am I possibly going to be able to wake up tomorrow and do what I'm planning to do based on how I'm feeling in this moment? And like your ability to learn how to shift that, maybe thought towards, I'm going to actually shift towards like some loving self-care of my body right now. I'm going to give my feet and my ankle and my body nothing but self-love and care, and I'm going to sleep, and I'm going to allow tomorrow to show up when it shows up, and then we'll deal with tomorrow when it arrives. And that shift enables you to put on day after day of miles that you had never even done one day of. You were able to do back to back to back to back days of. And it didn't mean that you weren't hurting at the end of those days, but it meant you found a way to direct your attention to something that would actually bring back to you healing and bring back to you a calming of that voice and allowing that voice to go quiet enough to actually sleep through to the next day and see what the next day had in store. And so there are these are very practical tools that we're talking about that, even though they come from all kinds of interesting backgrounds, they are day-to-day tools that people could use to make their lives better.
So, I mean, as you're talking, I'm reflecting again on I'm wearing these braces right now because there's things going on for my arms right now, but I'm not focused on it with my mind. I'm not like worrying about it. I'm here in this conversation and I'm enjoying it very much, right? And we've got 10 minutes or so. And I see that Olivia said, she said, "You are very right, Andrew. We need to see the good in others." So that was one comment that's come up. So if anybody's got questions, drop them in the comments in this LinkedIn Live, and we'll see if we can get to them.
Can we actually just, because I want to shine a light on our friend Olivia just for a moment.
Yeah.
But because she's such a powerful example of something that we're talking about today, right? Where as an educator, as a university educator, she, for a long time, like if you imagine introducing the idea of using technology in education, like maybe a decade ago, and in Uganda, where there are many, many parts of Uganda where people have never seen a computer before, right? And yet she somehow had decided that one of her missions in life was to introduce how technology could help teachers teach their students more effectively in new ways. And she imparted that passion she had for that, and that right? And that understanding, she imparted it to her students. And she had one young student, Francis, who is a friend now, who was in one of those classes and was really inspired about that and really took it on that could also be his mission, right? And now he's branded the African Traveling Teacher. You'll find him on YouTube. And he goes around Africa introducing rural villages and communities, the teachers and the students, to new technology that they can use as part of their learning and their education. And, I did a session with Francis a couple months ago where he had brought me in on a Zoom call to a 2-room schoolhouse in Uganda, in a rural community of Uganda, that had no windows on the building. It was pouring rain outside, so the sound of the rain was almost deafening to hear each other speak.
And just for clarification, you were not there in that building physically.
No, I was
you were
sitting here in Canada,
yeah.
having this conversation with Francis and some school kids, some high school kids in Uganda about what difference they could make in the world around. They had decided they wanted to work on the world's oceans and cleaning up the world's oceans. So I talked a little bit about my sailing trip, and I really wanted to hear what they had in mind for their solutions. And it just, you imagine that all of a sudden Olivia's, way of seeing potential in people as a university professor, she imparted a belief in Francis that he could learn something new and do something with that translated to Francis believing that he had within his capability the ability to help teach other teachers how to use technology, and to then inspire their students to use technology, and that those students over 1,000 miles from the nearest ocean felt inspired to actually work on projects to clean up the river in their community, which they then understood led to the ocean. Like, you think about the ripple effect of somebody who sees the potential in people. And that could be we think of that as school teacher, but that could be any role that somebody has in society. It's how you see your place relative to the people or the impact that you're making. And if you see it in a positive way, as Olivia has invited us, and see the potential and believe in the potential of people, you can't imagine the impact that makes over time. And I think if there's anything that I would hope my coaching career, when it's all over, is known for, it's that, right? Is that just having a fundamental belief that somebody can do far more than they've shown so far, and then my only job is to help them see that for themselves, because that's the only thing that will really last. And so, I really celebrate Olivia and her work, and Francis, and all the people that they've influenced already. And that's why, on Pathfinders, we're going to be sharing those stories, because there are everyday people who go and do their job every day with that mindset, and nobody knows about their stories. And I think more people should.
Thank you. Yeah. This is just landing so well. I'm thinking about another aspect of Olivia's experience recently has been the theft of every computer in their computer lab. And there certainly is the potential to focus on the disempowerment, the anger, the frustration. And instead, what's happened, this has been so beautiful. I remember Olivia made a LinkedIn post that showed these empty booths where the computers used to be. And she wrote, they took our computers, but they didn't stop us from doing what we're still teaching digital literacy. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And then the other way that it comes up for me is, I'm going to share a story. We are in an interesting landscape culturally, politically. And on just a week, I live in the United States, I live in Massachusetts, and a week or so after the election, last November, I was up in this place where I go walking, and I met a person there who was wearing things and sort of saying things that were clearly not, well, that they really wanted to, they were sort of wearing a badge almost of like, this is who I am, like focus on this is who I am. And I don't know why, but I decided, well, I do know why, because I believe in the law of the universe that what you focus on grows. And so I decided to just not really pay attention to the negative bids for conversation or anything like that. And we ended up having, I just wanted to celebrate the person in front of me and see the potential in them. Just what you were just saying. And we ended up having a really beautiful conversation, even though we discovered that we were maybe not aligned. We wouldn't have voted for the same person in the voting booth, for example. And I went on my walk that day, and what was in my head was, how can I help? Like, I'm just one person. I'm just one little person in the whole world. How am I going to help? And I left having had such an incredibly inspiring conversation with a beautiful human being who just happened to make a different choice in the voting booth. And I was like, I know how I can help now. Because, like, all it really is a conversation with someone, one connection at a time, one
Absolutely.
feeling of humanness with someone else. That's what is going to get us out of this and or help us through this. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and understanding, like, if we look at what politics stands for, even what religion stands for, without getting myself in too much trouble here, it is a set of understandings of how to live life in a way that creates for a better life. Like, if you think of what religion is, it's a way of behaving that leads to what different people and different cultures have determined is a better way of living in their own mind. Politics is different approaches to solve the problems of society or the problems of how to run a country. And the fact that this, like, we're in the middle of an election here in Canada right now, and people put the signs up on their lawns, right? And like, all they're really saying is, I believe in the mindset and approach being presented by this colored or this party, and other people are saying, well, I believe in this approach. And yet somehow those signs will actually have people stop talking to each other who would have otherwise could have run into each other at the grocery store and been very pleasant to each other. And it's just, we have to be so careful, I think, that we allow ourselves to get captured by these things and to stop being curious and stop seeing the good in other people and just accepting that people are all going through their lives with this narrative going on in their heads and different levels of understanding of what to do with all that information that's going through their head, and to just have a little bit more tolerance for it all. It's what the world needs right now.
Well, we focus on
in my humble opinion.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing this whole conversation. Really, I always find it absolutely eye-opening to chat with you, Andrew. You do have a way of expanding my understanding of the world, so it's always a pleasure.
Good. Likewise. Thank you.
Yeah. And we will. Okay. So what's super quick? What's our homework for people? What are we doing between now and the next one that has to do with the law of the universe?
Well, I'm going to go back to my own story and just say, give yourself some space in your days, as regularly as you really can, to just have some quiet space to notice the chatter and remember the two wolves. Like, one of them is going to present you with some not so nice stories, some not so nice energy, some not so nice feelings, and one's going to present the opposite, a hopeful, optimistic possibility, seeing the good in things. And just notice and remind yourself that you've got one piece of food. Which wolf do you want to give it to? And I think if nothing else, if people just practice that on some kind of consistent basis, they will start to see that they can start becoming much more intentional in that way about how they live their life.
Cool. And the Coach K invitation it's related, of course. It is to imagine a beam of light that comes out from your heart and play with what it feels like to focus that in some different areas. And just, again, just observe, just see what happens. And I would be very curious to hear how it's going with both of these invitations. And we will see you here live. This will be out in podcast form as soon as I get the editing done, so hopefully over the weekend. And then we will see you here again in May, the second Thursday in May, at noon Eastern Time for another LinkedIn Live, for another tool.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Kay.
Yeah, me too. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everybody.